Burt Lancaster was never supposed to be a Hollywood legend. Born Burton Stephen Lancaster in New York City on November 2, 1913, his early years were more about grit and survival than lights and cameras. Growing up in a working-class neighborhood, Lancaster didn't have the polished upbringing many stars of his time enjoyed. But from a young age, there was something different about him. Not only was he strikingly tall and good-looking, he had a physical energy that couldn't be ignored. Before anyone knew his name in Hollywood, Lancaster was already performing. Not on screen, but under the big top. He was a circus acrobat, flying through the air with a kind of confidence that would later define his on-screen presence. That background wasn't just a quirky footnote in his biography. It shaped the man he would become. His strength, balance, and fearlessness didn't just win him roles, they made him unforgettable. At a time when most actors relied on stunt doubles, Lancaster would do it all himself. It was that mix of raw talent and physical charisma that first caught the eye of Hollywood directors. And it didn't take long for the industry to come calling. His breakout came in 1946 with the film The Killers. In it, he played a tragic ex-boxer with a haunted past, a role filled with pain, tension, and complexity. Audiences couldn't look away. He wasn't just another handsome face. There was something real in his performance, something emotional and grounded. That role launched him into stardom, but more importantly, it showed that he was serious about acting. Over the years, Lancaster refused to be boxed into one category. He played cowboys, criminals, lovers, and flawed heroes. Whether it was a western, a noir thriller, or a dramatic epic, he brought a level of intensity that made every performance stand out. By the 1950s, he wasn't just acting. He was taking charge. Alongside Harold Hecht and James Hill, Lancaster co-founded Hecht-Hill-Lancaster, one of the first actor-led production companies in Hollywood. This was more than a business move. It was a bold step towards independence in an industry that liked to control its stars. Through this company, Lancaster helped produce films that challenged the status quo. Marty in 1955 wasn't your typical love story. It was raw and relatable. It won the Academy Award for Best Picture and proved that Lancaster had an eye for meaningful stories. Separate Tables in 1958 did something similar, tackling emotional and social struggles that most films avoided. But it wasn't just his projects that stood out. Lancaster's acting was on another level. He won 2 Academy Awards, first for Elmer Gantry in 1960, where he played a fiery ex-con turned preacher, and then for Birdman of Alcatraz in 1962, where he gave a moving performance as a prisoner who finds purpose in caring for birds. Both roles showed his range and his courage in playing complicated men. He didn't shy away from the darker sides of his characters. Instead, he made them human, relatable, and unforgettable. Off-screen, Lancaster wasn't afraid to speak his mind. At a time when Hollywood mostly stayed silent on political issues, he was loud and clear. He stood up for civil rights, supported artists' unions, and wasn't afraid to criticize injustice. While many stars played it safe, Lancaster used his fame to support causes he believed in. Whether it was raising money for Martin Luther King Jr. or speaking out against racism, he never backed down. His activism wasn't performative. It was personal. Even as the years passed and Hollywood evolved, Lancaster didn't fade into the background. He adapted, continuing to take on roles that challenged both himself and his audience. In The Swimmer, 1968, he played a man wandering through suburban pools, a strange and symbolic story that became a cult favorite. Then in Atlantic City, 1980, he gave one of his most powerful performances as an aging man confronting change, earning yet another Oscar nomination. He didn't need big action scenes or flashy dialogue. Just a look, a pause, a presence. That was enough. His personal life, though, was as layered as his films. Lancaster was married 3 times and had 5 children. His first marriage was to June Ernst, a fellow circus performer. They shared the high-flying lifestyle, quite literally, performing together before going their separate ways. The timeline of their divorce is murky, with different reports giving different dates. But what's clear is that their time together shaped him in ways that went far beyond romance. His second marriage to Norma Anderson began after they met during a USO tour in World War II. She wasn't from the spotlight, she was a stenographer, but she had a strong spirit and a passion for activism. Together, they supported civil rights, with Norma especially involved in organizations like the NAACP. They had 5 children and were seen as a socially conscious couple in a world that often preferred silence over statements. But even strong partnerships can be tested. Lancaster's intense work schedule, personal challenges, and emotional complexity eventually led to their separation in 1966 and divorce in 1969. It was during this turbulent time that he began a dramatic and at times dangerous relationship with Jackie Bone, a hairdresser on a film set. Their time together was fiery, passionate, and unpredictable. In one incident, she reportedly smashed a wine bottle over his head during a dinner party. An extreme moment in a relationship that was already on shaky ground. The relationship ended after Bone experienced a religious awakening, something Lancaster couldn't connect with. In 1990, years after the chaos and intensity of his earlier relationships, he married Susan Martin. This final marriage was quieter, offering him peace in his later years. As his health began to decline, she remained by his side. But even as he slowed down physically, Lancaster began to open up in a different way, sharing a part of himself that had remained hidden for decades. What he revealed stunned many. Throughout his life, Lancaster had formed romantic relationships with several prominent male figures in Hollywood. Relationships kept secret due to the harsh consequences that such truths carried at the time. One of these was with Cary Grant, an actor known for his elegance and charm. Their connection was emotional, cautious, and deeply private. Grant, always worried about his public image, kept the relationship hidden, but it left a mark on both men. Then there was J. Edgar Hoover. Yes, the FBI director. Their bond wasn't traditional or romantic in the usual sense, but it was filled with tension, secrecy, and psychological power dynamics. Lancaster didn't speak much about it, but it revealed just how complicated his personal world really was. He also shared a heartfelt relationship with Rock Hudson, the handsome leading man of the 1950s. Their affair was tender but marked by constant fear. Hudson was terrified of being outed, and the relationship had to remain hidden. Still, they found comfort in each other, often taking long road trips to escape the pressure of fame. Another connection that surprised many was with Ricky Nelson, the teen idol of the early 1960s. Lancaster, nearly 20 years older, acted as both a mentor and a partner. Their relationship was short-lived but meaningful, especially to Nelson, who saw Lancaster as a guide during a time of confusion and self-discovery. But the most intense of all may have been his relationship with Marlon Brando. Both were strong-willed, passionate, and unconventional. Their connection was electric, filled with arguments, affection, and endless conversations. But it couldn't last. Their personalities clashed, and the weight of hiding who they really were became too heavy. These hidden chapters of Lancaster's life painted a fuller, more honest picture of a man who had always been seen as a fearless on-screen hero. Behind the confidence was someone struggling to live truthfully in a world that demanded silence. When he finally spoke about these relationships later in life, it wasn't for shock, it was for relief. After decades of hiding, he wanted to be remembered not just as a great actor, but as a real, complex person. Burt Lancaster died on October 20, 1994, after suffering a third heart attack. He passed away quietly in his Century City apartment. There was no funeral, no public ceremony. Just a simple plaque beneath an oak tree in Westwood Memorial Park. It was how he wanted it. No spotlight, no grand farewell. Just peace. But his story doesn't end there. Lancaster's legacy lives on through his films, his bold career moves, his activism, and the truths he finally allowed to surface. He was more than just a movie star. He was a risk-taker, a fighter, a protector of what mattered to him. His life wasn't perfect, and that's what made it unforgettable. If you found this story compelling and want to hear more about iconic figures whose real lives were as dramatic as their films, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and let us know in the comments which actor or untold story you want to hear about next. Your support keeps these stories alive.